A very good morning to all of you, and a warm welcome in today's International Social Science Conference organized by Sri Chaitanya Mahavidyalaya in collaboration with Asansol Girls College. Today, we are privileged to evidence two most outstanding invited speakers and a number of research papers on issues and challenges of social science research in post-pandemic era. I'm sure that we are going to have a delightful and enriching session throughout the day. We know that COVID-19 crisis has disrupted the normal practice of economy and governance and scientific expertise. We have experienced a global economic crisis that was pretty much unexpected in the sense that the speed and scope of this downturn lacks historical precedence, and hence its impact cannot be readily modeled using the standard social science methods. The question of how to reopen our societies in post-pandemic era poses special questions for social science researchers beyond those of the immediate and difficult tasks at hand. For scholars, the question is not only what is society become after the COVID-19 pandemic, but how do the social conditions exposed, exacerbated, and created by the novel coronavirus demand that we substantively rethink our ideas of society and therefore some of the prevailing assumptions, methods, and theories of social science. The social sciences have a role to play in helping to scaffold the new forms of social solidarity that are being called for in this moment. A notion of shared humanity is a precondition for the common good on which social solidarity necessarily rests. Any moral instinct in human conduct is socially produced. It dissolves with the malfunction of the society. With so much about society at stake, there may be an opening for the human sciences to be humane in their aims and ambitions. This necessitates reimagination of the human sciences with human flourishing at the center. This opening gives an opportunity to pose questions about the conditions of our work as scholars. As we ask what kind of society we want in post-pandemic era, we are redirected to the need of robust social science research to both apprehend and construct renewed social communities. I'm extremely delighted that we have two very renowned and outstanding speakers who will just not only throw light on this whole issue, but also I'm very much sure that will pave the way for the future social science research works, and will definitely help the scholars who are doing their research in different forms. Now, apart from that, we have several research papers today which will also definitely help us to apprehend the whole issue in a much broader and specific way. Now, before we move on to the main proceedings of the conference, let me make two very important announcements. Kindly take note of the fact, all participants. Number one is that you, during the keynote speech of Professor Ananda Mitra, you must be having pretty a large number of questions, but don't interrupt, sir, in the midst of the session. Put your questions in the chat box or message box. We'll definitely take care of it after the keynote speech is over. We'll have a pretty long interactive session. And the second announcement is that you have a link through which you have already joined this session. You have been, those who are presenting papers in session 2, there will be a parallel session. One session will be continued in the present link from 11:40, I think 11:40 onwards, and the other link has been given to only to those participants who have the papers in session 2. So kindly take note of this fact. All the participants who have paper presentation in session 2, they must enter through the second link they have been given, right? Now, my duty is to call upon, request our honorable principal, sir, Dr. Subroto Chatterjee, to deliver his welcome address, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Talukdar. Good morning to everybody. It's my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of Sri Chaitanya Mahavidyalaya, Habra, North Chobbish Pargana, and Asansol Girls College, West Bengal, to this one-day International Social Science Conference. COVID-19 has devastated communities and economics around the world and profoundly changed the ways in which we live and work. The spread of COVID-19 for almost 1 year has presented an unparalleled challenge for academia and social science field as well. In a time when social contact should be kept to a minimum due to safety concern, qualitative and engaged research work have been under continuous threat. Coronavirus has changed social order across the globe. Keeping all this in mind, we have decided to organize a one-day international social science conference on issues and challenges of social science research in post-pandemic era. First of all, I would like to convey my sincere gratitude and thanks to our honorable resource persons, Professor Ananda Mitra, Professor of Communication, Wake Forest University, North Carolina, USA, Professor Monirul Khan, Department of Sociology, Dhaka University, Bangladesh, Professor Biswajit Ghosh, Department of Sociology, Burdwan University, West Bengal, and Professor Aniruddha Choudhury, retired professor and ex-teacher in charge, Dakshineshwar, Hiralal Majumdar Girls College. We are really grateful to all of you, sir, for spending your valuable time with us. Thanks to Dr. Sandeep Ghatak, Vice Principal, Asansol Girls College, for his support and cooperation to collaborate this conference with us. I would like to convey my thanks to learned participants for their valuable contribution to the emerging topic on issues and challenges of social science research in post-pandemic era. My special thanks to Team Sri Chaitanya Mahavidyalaya, especially Dr. Sanjeev Talukdar, convener of this conference, Dr. Pulokesh Sen, IQAC coordinator, Dr. Prosenjit Chattopadhyay, and Mr. Kuntal Das for their wholehearted support and cooperation to organize such international social science conference. Thanks to Anish and Mr. Sikanto Bosak for their technical support. Last but not least, I convey my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Rajesh Das, Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Bardwan University. Really, he is the main architect of this conference. I hope this conference will enlighten us to the new direction and new direction of social science research in post-pandemic situation. Thanks to all.
Thank you very much, Principal Sir, Dr. Subroto Chatterjee of Sri Chaitanya Mahavidyalaya. You must be also thanked because without inspiration, we could not have arranged such a program. Next, I will request Dr. Sandeep Ghotok, Vice Principal, Asansol Girls College, to deliver his valuable speech.
May I
Ghotok.
audible? May I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Please, 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 please.
Very good morning to all dignitaries and most honorable participants to this one-day international conference. At the outset, I owe my gratitude to Sri Chaitanya College, Chaitanya Mahavidyalaya Habra, as the college give us an opportunity to be the collaborator of this prestigious International Social Science Congress on issues and challenges of social science research in post-pandemic area. It cannot be ignored that COVID-19 is a great challenge before human being in every aspect, be it academic or non-academic sector. The present theme of the conference is highly relevant in the present context. In fact, the presence of COVID-19 or coronavirus changed our lives, our mind setup, and also entire society, as a result of which the social science research receives a severe blow from this emerging situation. I have seen the list of the distinguished scholars of this conference who engaged themselves in deliberating their ideas in this field. Certainly, their research papers gives us that light, which gives us the way to think in a correct direction. And I have every wishes that I believe that as the coordinator or the convener of this international webinar is Dr. Sanjeev Talukdar, who is the most efficient person, not only in Habra Sri Chaitanya College. Previously, he also worked in Asansol Girls College. We know him very much, his ability. So I have great faith and believe that this webinar will be a very great success and will be benefited from this webinar. And the topics indicated what the think tank acting in this regard. Anyway, I beg pardon from all participants and all the organizers that I am now engaged with a meeting with our Vice Chancellor in our university. So presently I'm leaving the seminar, but within few hours or half an hour, I will come back again to the seminar because I'm interested to listen the papers and the speech of the speaker so that I can enrich myself in the social science research areas. Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you a lot that you gives us an opportunity for taking part in this international webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep Da. Dr. Sandeep Ghotok, who actually happens to be my ex-colleague in Asansol Girls College, and not only colleague, who has guided me in every respect of academic and other areas. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now we are at the doorstep of the of beginning the main session of today's conference. Today, the keynote address will be given by Professor Anando Mitra, who is a professor of communication at Wake Forest University. And Sir does not, I know that Sir does not need any introduction, but as convention, let me say a few words about him for our knowledge in broader sense. His research and teaching interests include media, technology, culture, data collection, data management, and issues surrounding Indian culture. He is also credited with the invention of the idea of nerves, and his principal research writing and practical concerns are in the ways in which technology is constantly reshaping our everyday life practices and calling into question how we live our life without a constantly changing within a constantly changing global space. He uses the theoretical approach of the primacy of mediated narratives in contemporary life as reported at themediawatch.com. He was educated at Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, then Wake Forest University, and then the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He is the owner of an independent research agency called Management Learning Laboratories that specializes in applying technology to the collection, management, and visualization of data. Professor Mitra has, to his credit, numerous publications. I was actually going through the number of publications, but I just became tired to count them all. So I use the word numerous publications in his area and associated ones. Sir, it is our privilege to have you as our resource persons. You have also visited our another webinar earlier in the month of May 2020. Now it's over to you, sir.
Thank you. I hope everybody can hear me okay.
Okay, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you to everybody. So many people have come together to put together this conference, which I believe is of great importance and of vital nature at the juncture we are in research and in everyday life. I can't name everybody, but I will say, I don't know if Professor Dash is here today. I know I spoke to him just a while ago, and he was traveling and without good network access. But thanks again to the organizers and the sponsors of this one-day conference, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be here. With that said, just to be sure that I am doing this right, how much time am I given? I believe it was like 30 minutes. Is that correct? Can somebody correct me in that?
Yes, sir. Yes,
All right.
yes. Okay.
Okay. Fair enough. So the way I'd like
You
to
can
talk
exceed
about
30 minutes as well. You can exceed 30 minutes.
okay. I don't think I should. I mean, it's really difficult for everybody to be sitting in front of a computer for long periods, which many of us will do today.
Okay.
So I do want to thank you again for your kind introduction. I want to contextualize my work a little bit, given the background that you just said. I started my college career or college education in IIT Kharagpur, where I obtained my degree in BTech in chemical engineering. And very interestingly, at least to many people at that time, this is back in 1984, I chose to move out of engineering and moved into what is often called the social sciences or humanities. And I began studying communication at Wake Forest University, where I am today. And I liked it. I started to realize that there is a point of intersection between what we learned as engineers and science technologists and what the social sciences were grappling with in terms of how to do research and what does research mean. Thereafter, I moved on and studied what is often called critical cultural studies, coming out of a neo-Marxist position of the British cultural studies tradition, and that happened at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, and I spent several years there. At the same time, I was also working in hardcore social science, empirical data collection, and the traditional methods of social science research, such as collecting data through questionnaires and statistical analysis, sampling. I ended up heading up the sampling section of a survey research laboratory at University of Illinois. So, and then what ended up happening is technology. Right around 1997, 98, all of a sudden the internet was starting to become a household word in the West and quickly over here in India and across the world. So all of these different circumstances led me to a situation where I started to ask the critical question, how does new technology begin to have an impact on our lives? Who would have thought that the impact would be as amplified as it is right now? So all through the early part of the 21st century, I was working with that, and it was becoming clear, and then these are the main things I want to cover today. It was becoming clear that there were certain changes happening in everyday life, as well as in the way in which social scientists, be it communication, be it sociology, to some degree even psychology, political science, how these disciplines would collect data. And use data, because there were certain changes going on in what we would even call data, and certain changes going on in terms of how we would take the data that we have and interpret that data to draw meaningful conclusions. And these conclusions are incredibly important because they could drive policy, they could drive further research, but being a stickler for detail, I have always taught my students that the first thing you have to start with is good data. If you don't have that, then everything else falls apart. So all of this was going on pretty well until the pandemic hit. And as we know today, end of February, almost the end of February 2021, we can see that the pandemic has had an uneven impact globally. So in other words, I've been sitting in Kolkata I arrived in Kolkata on January 25th. And when I left from the United States was reeling under, who knows, the third or fourth surge of the virus. On the other hand, if I look around Kolkata today, I almost feel like we are talking about the pandemic in the past tense. And if nothing else goes wrong, perhaps things will be coming back to some, as we keep saying, post-pandemic reality, perhaps earlier in India than surely in the United States. All of that leads us to the questions that have been asked already. How will we address social science research in the world that will emerge? My first point would be that some of the changes that were impacting social science research actually began before the pandemic. These are things that were driven by changes in the social space, changes in technology. What the pandemic ended up doing is it accelerated the process. It kind of brought certain things in sharp focus, which people were just beating around the bush on. To give you an example, and this is not social science research necessarily, to give you an example which all of us are acutely aware of, is that we are meeting right now in front of a computer. At this point on my screen, all I'm seeing is, other than Professor Khan, all I'm seeing is our letters and names. I'm not seeing the faces. All right. This would not have happened without the pandemic. And that actually is the key to my point. The pandemic might not have caused the changes, but it certainly accelerated things that might have taken much, much longer to come through. Online instruction. I'm sitting here in Kolkata, I'm teaching in Winston-Salem. And that kind of a reality would not have been possible unless we would have responded to the pandemic, we being academics, would have responded to the pandemic in such a way. So surely the pandemic has changed the notion of human contact. But before we go there, let's return back to the point I made earlier as how the notion of data had begun to change even in the pre-pandemic era. Generally speaking, social science research, particularly in the West, and I think it applies to social science research in South Asia, India, Bangladesh, etc., in our neighborhood, has followed a process that began after the Second World War, which has often been called the positivist impact, which is essentially saying that, look, we can do what natural scientists, what chemistry and biology and physics were doing, and we can measure human activity, human behavior in a numeric way using certain instruments that we feel are reliable. So data primarily was numeric data. And the mechanism of data collection was primarily instruments. And by instruments, I mean things such as questionnaires, where you would actually, we all know this, you administer a questionnaire to a sample, carefully selected sample, and you'd analyze the outcome of the data collection, and then you make the draw conclusions. So this was the positivist impact. And the positivist impact, which really begins with the European scholars who migrated to the United States after the war, Lazarsfeld comes to mind. Paul Lazarsfeld's work is incredibly important in that tradition. The positivist impact had two major items to it, if you would. One was the presumption that human behavior and human attitudes could indeed be reduced to numbers. Therefore, one of the criticisms of positivism is indeed that it is incredibly reductionist. It reduces behavior to numbers and attitudes. The second part of the positivist impact was the process of data collection must remain absolutely unbiased by the researcher's points of view, and therefore, whatever data is collected can potentially be generalized to a population. So this generalization, the drive for generalization, actually led to all kinds of academic research in terms of what we did in sampling statistics and so forth, right? So you'd say, how the heck do we select the sample and we make a claim that so many people, the rest of the population will do that? That was possible because statistics, keep in mind, was existent as a part of natural science research. We as engineers were trained in statistics because statistics offers certain looks at reality. Statistics as a tool offers certain looks at reality that is incredibly informative. You know, you can learn things through the statistical tools. So in the confluence of empiricism, which is database, generalizability, and eventual analysis of numbers, we see the growth of social science research that continued actually in the entire 20th century and into the 21st century. And I would argue, as I've done in my books and other places, that this is not going away. That will remain the primary mode of social science research. But then what changes? Well, the argument that I make is the nature of data changes. The nature of data changes because what used to be numeric data is increasingly being supplemented by discursive data. And I use this term discursive data, so I must take a moment to kind of unpack that term. Data we all understand. What the heck is discursive? What is discourse? And the way I look at it in my writing, discourse is essentially what we say. Our voice makes that discourse. And note the notion of voice is not necessarily just voice as in this, as what we are doing now, but voice as expression of opinion or expression of behavior in the language and in the voice of the subject. I paused there for a moment because this is an important distinction. Let's go back to the questionnaire. Who writes the questionnaire? Who writes the questions? Be it a multiple choice, Likert type question or a semantic differential scale, who writes it? The researcher writes it. And in most cases, the researchers would take great pains to measure the reliability, statistical reliability of the questions, of the items in the questionnaire, validity, statistical validity of the items in the questionnaire, hoping that they don't introduce bias. On the other hand, what we get in the discursive data is the responses or what is being said is indeed biased. It comes in the voice and the language of the subjects. In this case, the subjects are not cubbyholed or sort of caged within the language of the researchers and their questions and their multiple choice answers. This changes data. All of a sudden, we have a situation where one could actually listen to the subjects. One could actually gather information from the subjects. As a matter of fact, this is something that has also been used in social science research, which is an offshoot of social science research, comes from cultural anthropology, which follows the work of Gertz and others, which is called ethnographic research. Ethnographic research has been kind of a second fiddle to the positivist social science because ethnographers, primarily anthropologists, would go out into the community and study the community. They'd do observation studies, they would listen, and then they would do a deep writing of what they've observed and listened to. And that deep writing is a discursive process. And their point of analysis is exactly what they're listening to. For people who cannot afford to do traditional ethnographic research, we do something else. Focus group discussions, FGDs. FGDs is actually what we often call the poor person's ethnography because it's far less expensive. For instance, Rajesh, my friend and colleague here, is out there in the villages right now, probably doing FGDs. Then there came the idea of IDIs, in-depth interviews, right? Which we sit down and we listen. We let the voice of the people actually answer the question. Even in an FGD, I've run way many FGDs in my life. One of the things I've learned and I teach is you just proctored the meeting. It's not your meeting, it is their meeting. So you just listen. You keep it in line. I remember, I'll tell you some stories. I was running a series of FGDs with Palestinians in the West Bank. And it was interesting to keep that conversation in line because while we were talking about a very specific health-related matter, if you understand sitting with Palestinians in the West Bank with Israeli settlements surrounding you, the conversation always goes to Israel and Palestine, right? But that's where you have to keep it in line. So the point is, data is changing. Data is now discourse. And traditional positivist research had no real way of either analyzing the data or, even if they could analyze the data, make sense of the data. What is the data telling us? You cannot apply a regression model to 10 conversations. You cannot apply a statistical test of significance to 10 conversations or 100 conversations. This became the first challenge. And this is a pre-pandemic challenge, by the way. It didn't have a whole lot to do with the pandemic necessarily. What started to happen is as people realized that the nature of data is changing, it also became clear that technology was becoming pervasive. Certain kinds of tools were now becoming easily available to large swaths of the population across the globe. To give you a simple example, there's some statistics that demonstrate that there are more smartphones per capita in India now compared to clean toilets per capita. You can use the phone, but you can't go to the bathroom. That's what it comes down to. So we have a situation that the smartphone, simple tool, pretty much everybody in this room probably have access to one, maybe more than one. So the smartphones suddenly became accessible to large groups of the population. Simultaneously, platforms began to emerge where traditional social networks, such as a neighborhood, such as the church, such as, a club, or a group of like-minded people, those social networks were able to migrate to the digital platform. And then we started, perhaps somewhat incorrectly, calling them social media. What I argue is it's really not social media as such, but it really is a migration of the real communities to the virtual space. Now, what started to happen with that, very interestingly, and this triggered my research back in 2010, in the current research that I'm involved with, it suddenly became clear that when people go on these social networks, what do you think they do? They're not producing numbers, they're producing discourse, right? They're saying things. They're not responding to questionnaires. Not only are they saying things, they're saying it they keep saying in their voice. Imagine for a second, this is an imaginary task. Facebook came into existence in 2007. I know, I became a member of Facebook in 2007, 12 years. 12 years. In that 12 years, even if I posted one post per month, there'll be 144 discourses that I've produced. A typical Facebook user, an active Facebook user, who's been using it for the past 10 years, might easily post one Facebook post per week. 10 years, 52 weeks, all right? 520 posts from one individual, all right? You keep adding to that. And we start to quickly realize that this discourse is indeed data. It is not something that has been collected carefully by sampling mechanisms and distribution of questionnaires, but imagine if I could collect all that data. Not just one person, if I could collect the data of an entire community of people posting once a week, a community made up of just 50 people, 500 posts in 10 years, 25,000 posts in 10 years. Imagine the amount of discourse. And then other things started to come in. Tweet became popular, right? I can't remember exactly which year Twitter started, but it came quite quickly in the heels of Facebook. Then comes Instagram, and there are several people in this group, I'm sure, who are younger than people like me, and they start to extend themselves, they start to express themselves in these spaces. This triggered my research in NARPS that was mentioned earlier. I made the argument that social science research really needs to examine these narrative bits, the bits of narrative that are circulating in the virtual space. And the number began to grow. And it grew so rapidly that right before the pandemic, which started to be talked about a couple of years before the pandemic, everybody started talking about a new term called big data. It was no longer just data, but it was big data, because the volume was incredibly large. What started to become a problem, however, is what the heck do you do with this data? I'll give you an example, and this is an American example. Those of you who might have followed the US presidential elections that concluded on November 5th, 2020, and in spite of former President Trump's insistence that he won the election, the facts did remain that the number of votes obtained by current President Biden earned him the presidency. And there's a little other story that was going on. In the state of Georgia, there were two runoff Senate elections. What that simply means that the senators of those two elections At the end of the day, the number of counts was not sufficient or was so close that it required a second round of voting. That's a runoff. And that voting was scheduled for January 5th, 2021. So my team decided, look, these two runoff elections is going to generate a lot of tweets. And we started collecting tweets. This is social science research, mind you. This is not, I'm not doing anything other than social science research. We collected the tweets. We had about 500,000 some tweets, and we ran it through the process of our research, discourse analysis, and we predicted. So this is what social science research likes to do, isn't it? They want to do the regression analysis and predict. And we predicted 3 days before the runoff elections on January 5th that these two candidates will win this election. And both of them happen to be Democratic candidates. We held our breath and said, this is new, guys. This is not based on numbers. This is based on narratives. This is based on machine learning and artificial intelligence that we are running on this huge amount of discourse. And we crossed our fingers and held our breath, and sure enough, we were right. And that gives a proof of concept that when you start looking at this new form of data, which I'm now calling big data, we need to bring new forms of analysis and new theories to bear. We need to figure out how we use computing technology, which is heavily available. And mind you, these are not necessarily very expensive technologies. It doesn't require a huge laboratory. Much of what I did for this particular analysis and what I actually do on the computer I'm using right now. I mean, it's a pretty standard laptop, Windows laptop. But what becomes important is the recognition that the nature of data has changed, that we are now in the realm of discursive big data. We have to move away and beyond the numeric data. It is not to say that the numeric data is unimportant, but it is to say that we have to supplement it. We have been way too reductionist with that numeric data for such a long time. And part of the reason was we were hamstrung by resources. There was no way, even if you collected 500,000 small anecdotes about an event, there would not have been any way to analyze that. No human being would actually be able to sit down and read it and make sense of it. New technologies came in, companies like, research out of companies like IBM, who do a lot of the artificial intelligence AI research, started to offer these programs, which we started to use. And we realized there is value, but then comes another challenge. While the technology offers the data and the technology offers the analytic tools or the tools for analysis, what is still lacking is a theoretical foundation. Positivists had come up with the theoretical foundation. Social science research had made the argument, go back to the work of Fishbein, for example, out of psychology. They made the argument that human behavior is predicated on attitudes and intent to behave. And therefore, if I can measure attitudes, I can predict behavior. Those kinds of theoretical foundations were the motivation behind that traditional positivist social science research. But here comes people like me, and they're making the argument, hey guys, let's move on. Let's look at this big data. Let's look at the discourse. And the question that comes up is, what's your theory? What are you applying to this? It's not just you saying that, hey, this is what it is, but you got to have some background, some theory to back it up. And so we looked at traditional communication research, and we started to discover that, you know what? There are people who did narrative analysis of stories. Stories become a fundamental aspect of our lives. Just think about everything that we do. We build it around stories. And Walter Fisher, back in '84, had made the argument that we are narrative beings. We live as storytellers and story listeners. And the stories that we listen to actually have an impact on our behavior, perhaps our attitude. So instead of just measuring the attitudes, How about we go a little bit further back in the chain and try and figure out what stories people are listening to? And what started to happen with the pandemic is the stories shifted to technological platforms. All right, people quit going out to bars, going out to restaurants and coffee shops. People started sitting in their rooms and they listened to stories. What kind of stories? Facebook, Twitter, Zoom meetings, this meeting, whatever this is on, Google Meet. And these stories are now the new data that we have. This particular session, for example, is being recorded. And I don't know if Google does this, but I do everything on Zoom. At the end of the Zoom meeting recording, guess what Zoom sends me? And that's why I asked earlier what should be the language of the conversation today. Zoom sends me a transcript of the entire conversation. I don't know if Google does that. Can you imagine what that means? That means that I have data. So what has started to happen is because of the distancing and because of the lack of human contact, people like me who do research, and I'll tell you what, all through the pandemic, my research has not stopped. I've been running focus group meetings on EE platforms like Zoom, which allows me to meet people, to listen to them, and collect the data, and that data becomes the discourse. And that discourse is now available for analysis. That's one of the biggest changes. That's a combination of technology, which allows it to happen, and the availability of the theoretical foundation, in this particular case, as I said, the narrative analysis. And the narrative paradigm, and what I come out with the NARP-based analysis. This is the opportunity. It's a harsh word to use with respect to a pandemic that has killed, I don't know how many thousands in America today, and it's still killing. It's a harsh word to use, but this is the opportunity of COVID. COVID has suddenly made it possible and acceptable to do ethnographic research on the computer screen. And that ethnographic research becomes big data and then analyze that. This also leads, and I'm going to start to wrap up. I've been going about 27 minutes, I think. It also brings into the problematic another sacrosanct idea of traditional positivist research, which is sampling. We all grew up, I did at least, I studied under one of the largest international name in sampling, Seymour Sudman. I used to actually have an office right next to his office. An amazingly learned person, always took me on as his mentee and taught me sampling from the ground up. And we all thought that, you know, if we can sample this correctly, or sample from the population correctly, we got it. We know what the real people, what everybody else will think. And over again, particularly in the field of political communication and political behavior, we've been proven wrong. Several elections across the United States, presidential elections, midterms, Senate runoffs, and all of the exit polling and all of that, carefully sampled, began to demonstrate there's something wrong. Something's not working. Therefore, but we had to do it. Sampling was the only way to do it because of lack of resources. There was no way I ran a phone center where you used to do phone interviews. There was no way I could call more than 5,000 people for a national study. It would be just out of control expensive. All of a sudden that changes. How much does it cost to collect tweets if you have the right tools? I'll give you an example. I wrote a program along with some of my computer science colleagues back in, when did this all start? 2011, 12. We just sat down, literally a application called, if you know a little bit of the technology, we wrote a app call on Twitter and ran it. And all of a sudden we said, geez, you know, tweets are falling into our database. And that program still runs, total cost. A few conversations over coffee and beer, write the code, pull the data. And that's how much it costs. literally for me nothing. You could pay a lot of money for these things, but if you're a little creative, you have the right kind of connections, you can do these application calls and collect data from open databases such as tweets. So it's not the expense necessarily that's holding us back, but it is a change in the mindset that we can move away from traditional generalizable positivist research, which fundamentally remains reductive, to another kind of research where we are willing and open to data that is discursive, and which in turn can be analyzed through tools that are rapidly being developed. Once we make that move, and I think this move has been kickstarted by the pandemic, now we are saying that, geez, I can't go out. I mean, they take an IDI. How the heck do you do an IDI in the US today when we still have a lockdown or, whatever we call it, a very failed effort to control the pandemic? But you can go, schools are not open. My college is operating, but half of us are teaching online. I can do a focus group. I just did a study in Florida. I didn't go to Florida. I couldn't go to Florida in the month the study started in August. I couldn't go to Florida for the study from North Carolina. Everything was done online. The data was collected, all of the open-ended data, discursive data was collected online. It was transcribed by the system, analysis, bam, you have information. And then you visualize. Then you go that route. What does it save? Well, it saves one important thing. Earlier, there's a kind mention of my research, my own research efforts. It saves me money. Flying down to Florida, staying in a hotel room, food, etc. And I didn't have to do any of that. I just went down to my basement and I did my study down there. Flight of stairs from the computer. Corporations, at least in the corporate world, would be stupid not to adopt this. And that's where the change will come. We'll start to see a post-pandemic world where social science research will understand that, there is a greater amount of data to be collected at an incredibly cheap cost. And once we apply the tools that we have available within the theoretical foundations, we might actually gather information that can be actionable. Actionable information is information that we can then use for policy, for research. So that's where I think it'll go. We'll rely much more on easily available tools. We will probably move a little bit away from pure dependence on numeric analysis. We'll rely more on discursive data. And finally, I would say, and that's another conversation, we'll probably rely quite a bit on what is called metadata. Metadata being data about data. So for example, when I drag tweets off the tweet space, I'm not only getting the actual tweet, but I know the person who's tweeting, the instrument that they're using the tweet, the geolocation of the tweeter, a bunch of other stuff that my students look at and say, what the heck do we do with this? And I said, just hold on. All of this will become meaningful as we move forward. With that, I'm gonna stop. Like I said, I think I've taken a little over 30 minutes, and I am happy to take questions and enter into a conversation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much, sir, for your wonderful and most illuminating lecture. And we have come to know so many things from your lecture. Now, I think there will be questions.
Thank you.
Now, for receiving and conveying it to you, sir, I'm handing it over to Dr. Prosenjit Chattopadhyay, Head, Department of English, Sri Chaitanya Mahavidyalaya. Dr. Chattopadhyay.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Dr. Sanjeev Talukdar, convener of this international conference. I would implore the participants, the audience, to pose questions, if any, to sir. Our venerable guest, Ananda Mitra. Please do write your questions in the chat box, already we have 2 or 3 questions. There are not much more questions right now. Sanjeev has 2 questions.
Can we ask questions, orally?
Please, please. Manurul sir, please.
Okay, okay. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. It is an excellent presentation, Professor Mitra, because I think, it was stimulating for me when you were touching upon the positivist tradition, its reductionist, inclination, and as well as how the discursive nature of the, new approach is actually giving us some new insight. Just my question would be like this: that if we, recall the dramaturgical, theoretical perspective of the common man, where it is, argued that what is actually said, there might be a kind of, gap between what is actually intended to say, what is actually said, and what is, at the back of the mind. So that might have some kind of implication in the kind of data that will be collected from the Twitter or on the Facebook. This is one thing. And secondly, the country like Bangladesh, where there is very strong, very strict rules that what one can express on media, that might also put some kind of constraint in the expression of the mind of the respondents. So how can we actually deal with these kinds of constraints when we do this kind of discussion analysis? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think these constraints, you're talking about Bangladesh. I would think there are similar constraints in many other parts of the world. Actually, even including what Americans think about a free democratic society, I think there are constraints over there as well. Yes, so we have to presume to some degree that the discourse that we're looking at could perhaps have been what Goffman would call the public face and not necessarily the private face of the speaker. Notwithstanding that, with assuming that to be true as well, the way I respond to this question, which does come up frequently, is a couple of things. Number one, let's keep that in mind. And with that in mind, still let us look at what the narrative is. Keeping in mind that the narrative has been constrained to some degree, because maybe within that constraint itself, a narrative will emerge which could provide data, which is actionable. That's the first part. And the second part that I rely on, and this goes back to basic math, which is the law of large numbers. The law of large numbers would argue that as the amount of data or amount of numbers increase, the fluctuations or the so-called noise begins to get washed out, just in a numeric fashion. So part of what I'm doing, or I'm suggesting, almost presumes that it is indeed big data, which is the volume is incredibly large, which, if I may, there was a question over here from Professor Chattopadhyay, which is what is the concept of big data? In a very simple way, three aspects of big data. One, big data has large amount of volume, or in other words, Aadhaar card or the Aadhaar system in India is a good example of big data, because theoretically it has data on every single resident of India. That's a huge number. Second, big data has variety. Or in other words, to go back to the Aadhaar example, the Aadhaar data can easily be connected with other kinds of data, such as your phone number, perhaps your banking, and so forth and so on. So for any particular individual, there's variety of data that is available. And third, the third aspect of big data is velocity, how fast the data changes. In other words, if you were to look at another example, let's say Twitter or Facebook or any of these things, WhatsApp, how quickly does the data change? how much of data is being created at any moment in time. To give you some examples, global examples, and I don't know the exact numbers, but these numbers are pretty large and astounding, which is how many YouTube videos are being uploaded at any moment. If somebody has access to the network, I don't want to mess up my access right now, you'd probably find that to be hundreds of thousands per minute, right, per day. That's what I mean by big data, the 3V: volume, variety, and velocity. Does that help, Professor Charapatai?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. I don't know, Professor Khan, if I answered your question fully, but I'd try to give a follow-up if there's one.
No, I think that's a very good point.
Excellent answer from your end.
I'm sorry, I
I
didn't.
would like to implore the participants, not the guests, that please do put your questions in the chat boxes instead of uttering in the microphone. Please do. In the meanwhile, we have 3 more questions, 2 from Dr. Sanjeev Talukdar to Sir.
Right. Yes. Yes. So Professor Talukdar asked 2 questions. If you can see the chat, you'd see them. Throw some light on narrative bite. Could you please an example establish how attitude shows behavior? First of all, the term that we are using, and I'm putting it in chat, is actually narrative bits, which is abbreviated into NARBs. Simple idea. All we're saying is through the computer, through the digital technologies, and thus the term bits in reference to bits making up bytes. What I'm basically saying that every time we put 160 character tweet out, or a Facebook post, or an Instagram post, or put something up on, what's the other one? Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, any of these. We are creating a narrative, a small story. So for instance, I have quit using Facebook quite a bit nowadays, knowing how much of surveillance is going on. If I were to say at the end of the session on my Facebook post, hey, I had a great time meeting with scholars in India at a webinar. I've told the story. I've been benign story. A story doesn't have any particular impact in terms of my attitude, perhaps. It's a behavior story, but that would be considered a narrative bit. Let me answer the second question. Can we depend fully? Okay, could you, from Professor Talukdar, could you place an example as how attitude shows behavior? Yeah, plenty. I mean, I'll take a common public health behavior, smoking. If you could make a person stop smoking by imposing a set of burdens on the person. For instance, you could claim, as we do, that you cannot smoke inside a public building. That would change the behavior, but that same person might go outside and smoke, so the behavior really hasn't changed. It's just been imposed by the restrictions. If, on the other hand, you can impact this in the person's mind, that smoking causes cancer. We get a pack of cigarettes, I smoke. Here, this is how attitude, right here it says, I don't know if you can read it, smoking kills. What it tells me is change your attitude. You want to die. If you don't want to die, quit smoking. That, if I can get that change to happen, then I will probably stop, not because of the restriction. So that's the connection. This is the work of Fishbein. And if later on you are interested, I can send you the citations for Fishbein. I was a student of Fishbein in Illinois, and so he was quite instrumental in the, as I said, early 80s to lay out the model that connected attitude to behavior. If there isn't a follow-up, then I see yet another question from Dr. Sen. Thank you for stating it was a good session. I appreciate that. Can we depend fully on the type of discourse data? Well, interesting question, isn't it? Because there is a presumption in the question that you can actually rely on regular survey data. I would argue you cannot rely on that either, for a variety of reasons. Your sampling could be bad. Your items could be bad. The data that you get could be bad. Because even though you did sampling correctly, let us say a phone interview, the interview effect comes in. So I would say that as we look into the future, we might actually need to question this assumption that survey data or traditional experimental data is indeed certainly reliable. Perhaps it's not. It has certain degrees of reliability. And if that is the case, my answer to your question would be, can we depend fully on the type of discourse data like the regular survey data? No, because you can't depend fully on anything, on either one of these. What you get is a probability function. Eventually, it's a probability function, which is basically saying, what is the likelihood somebody would behave in a certain way? And I would argue that you can get that likelihood prediction from a combination. I'm a strong proponent of multi-method research without necessarily privileging one method over the other, but imagining and innovating ways in which you combine the two methods. I hope I've answered the question. If not, you can either post a follow-up, I'd be happy to answer it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I think, sir, the amount of big data helps you to improve your accuracy, improve the accuracy of the data level. I think, sir. I think so, sir.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Of course. Thank you for the question.
Any more question from the participants? You can please put those in the chat box. Any more questions to Sir, Professor Ananda Mitra?
Okay.
I think it is the time for Dr. Sanjeev Talukdar to take the charge and guide us following the schedule.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Chattopadhyay. And we are delighted that I'm telling it to Professor Mitro that Dr. Rajesh Das has given a message that he has been delighted to hear you while traveling to North Bengal University. Have you seen that? So, sir, kindly unmute. Kindly unmute. So
Yes,
you have
I
mute.
saw.
Yeah.
It came in the chat as well. দেখলাম চ্যাটে এসছে
chat এসছে. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, sir, for a wonderful session that you have gifted us. And now it is time for the paper presentation session. There will be two parallel sessions. One will be continued in the present link, and the other link has been given to those participants who will present their paper in session 2, parallel session 2. So kindly, those who have got that link, kindly enter through that link. Now, in the first session, in the present session, in this link, Dr. Professor Bishwajit Ghosh, Professor of Sociology, Bardhaman University, will chair the session. Welcome, sir. And he will be co-chaired co-chaired by Dr. Prashanjit Chattopadhyay, Head Department of English, Sri Chaitanya Mahavidyalaya. I will just hand over the charge of this paper presentation session to both these professors. So, Professor Bishwajit Ghosh is present there.
Yeah, I'm present.
Professor
Okay,
Talukdar,
thank
good
you.
morning.
Thank
Good
you.
morning, Professor Talukdar.
Good morning. Good
Good
morning.
morning,
Good
good morning.
morning.
আমরা
Good
রিচ
morning.
করেছি খানিকটা আমরা কিন্তু from the beginning আমরা শুনতে পাচ্ছি.
হ্যাঁ, হ্যাঁ,
Somehow we able to communicate just to share our chat. And
Yes.
good morning, Professor Ananda Mitra, Monerul sir, Bishwajit sir, Principal sir, Subroto Mukherjee, all the participants. And really, it was the introductory session and the keynote speech is very interesting. Already know Professor Ananda Mitra and Monerul Khan sir. Thank you all.
Thank you, Rajesh Babu. Thank
May I
you.
just-
আমাকে একটু বেরোতে হচ্ছে। I'll come back to the link as soon as I can.
Okay,
Thank you
okay.
again. Thank you for
Thank
the
you, sir.
opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah, may I just inform the student, the organizer, that one participant, Dr. Pankaj Kumar, just called me over the phone, and he said that he is not allowed to join the link. So
Yes,
somebody who is managing it, please allow Pankaj Kumar to join.
Srikanto Babu. Srikanto Babu.
Please allow Pankaj Kumar to join. He is attending a poll training somewhere in Hooghly.
Yes, he called me yesterday.
So please
He's
allow
having
Pankaj
election
Kumar.
training. In spite of that, he is trying to join, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Srikanto Babu, একটু দেখুন।
না এগুলোতে
কোনো রিকোয়েস্ট এখন আসেনি এখানে।
ও আসেনি এখনো?
না, যা রিকোয়েস্ট পেন্ডিং নেই কিছু।
ও আচ্ছা, দেখুন একবার পঙ্কজ কুমার একজন হয়তো জয়েন করছে। আচ্ছা, ঠিক আছে, আপনি ঠিক আছে। ওকে স্যার, Vishwajit sir, it's over to you. Okay,
So
thank you.
we have around 10 to 12 paper presenters, and the first presenter is a colleague of mine from Bardhaman University, Dr. Ananda Mohan Kaur, and he will be presenting his paper on social science research in post-pandemic era. I now invite Dr. Kaur to begin his presentation. I think each presenter will get around 8 to 10 minutes to tell whatever he is going to tell. Okay, Dr. Kaur is there. Has Ananda Mohan Kaur joined, or he is also assigned election duty? Okay, since Ananda is absent, let me call the next. Pankaj Kumar is also in election duty. He hasn't joined yet. Anyway, Debboduti Kormokar, you are present?
Yes, sir, I'm present.
Okay, so why don't you begin your paper presentation?
Yes, sir. I would take time for presenting my screen. Just few seconds. Okay, so yes, it seems I am having a problem. So I am beginning my.
Just talk.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. So, good morning, respected sir and dear participants. The topic for today's discussion of mine is discerning laughter in pandemic, whereby I wish to trace out the issue of laughter and how it has transformed in the course of pandemic. So I would begin my presentation by saying that the pandemic has created an era of anxiety across the globe, and it has resulted in reforming work and home schedules, disciplining the body and habits, which became the integral elements of the new normal situation. Now, amidst the erosion of formal styles of living, the familiarity of smile or laughter has also now become rarer. Now, talking about laughter or smile, I would like to begin by saying that incongruity is a feature of social living, and laughter is also a consequence of such incongruity. However, not all incongruity is laughable, and pandemic is an example of such. When we speak about social interactions and how laughter or smile occurs in our everyday conversations or in everyday social interactions, we find that the face is always an instrument for building relations, interactions, and also to evoke amusement. The individual is now left to laugh out alone, in contrast to the former conception whereby laughter is considered as social. Also, we see that in the pandemic situation, it has concealed the smile under the cloak of masks, and when the physical proximity is abandoned, the individual has resorted to self-amusement, albeit as passive audience in virtual media, whereby we find that the individual is now uh, busy in watching comedy shows or memes or funny videos, which are some of the resorted items for amusement. Next, I would like to highlight the concept of happiness because it is integrally related with the issue of humor or laughter. And whenever we find that we see happy face, whenever we find that we see smiling or laughing faces, we always equate it with as the person being happy. So the concept of happiness is integral to modern living, and we are socialized to be happy with fellow humans. Now, the new normal poses us with two important questions. A, are we free to express our actual emotional states everywhere? And B, is technology an authentic medium to convey emotions? With regards to this question, I would briefly like to comment that the pandemic situation has magnified humans to be prosumers. Now, what are prosumers? Prosumers are those humans who are very much part of the production of cultural objects that he consumes. Say, for example, when we watch reality shows or when we see advertisements, with creating avenues that promote the happy self in chaos. The socially shared smiles and laughter in the new pandemic situation shifts in mobile and TV screens. Such joys lack the we feeling, however, that the individual used to feel in close proximity before with the other humans. Individuals also do not have the scope of expressing the actual emotional state in virtual media. The technology is an impediment as the actual reaction is never always conveyed through emojis, for example, to the other. Say, for example, when we are replying to the other person through the use of emojis, the other person may not be able to gauge the actual state of mind which I have, but seeing the emoji, he may have a false impression about me that I may be happy or I may be depressed. So I would conclude by saying that the pandemic has therefore been an eye-opener for the modern man, with a reminder to retrace the communitarian roots which promote the sense of cooperation and we feeling. It is where the real joys of laughter reside. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Let me pick up one or two very brief intervention or questions, if there is any. If there is any question to Mr. Dev, please. If anyone has any query, any question to ask Mr. Dev, you can ask now, or maybe in the chat box you can put your question. So anyway, let me just pass a comment. It's wonderful that we are talking about new things. Laughter has become an important agenda in modern life, and during pandemic particularly, we have started talking about the importance of laughter, and you have brought out the significance. And I would like to, insist on knowing more about you. But since this is only a paper presentation, so obviously the scope was limited. But I believe you would be looking into the social basis and who is laughing and who wants to laugh more. Is there any class basis, age basis, where you can classify more? You can talk more about the kind of persons who are actually engaged in this kind of pursuits. Probably within family, outside family. These are certain things that probably would allow you to write a full-fledged paper. Okay. So what I insist on looking into these aspects so that you can look into the social aspects of laughing. right?
Okay. Okay.
I
Thank
mean,
you.
it's not just a physical act; it's a sort of mental act as well, right? So
Yes, sir.
stress look into those aspects so that your activity becomes much more understandable. So Prashanjit Babu, you may act as co this thing by inviting
Yes, sir.
participants. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Probably Professor Mondakranta from our college has a
Right.
question to Professor Karmukar.
Okay.
Mondakranta, তুমি বলো. You have raised a hand. Mondakranta. Okay, sir.
Anyway, move
We
on to
should
the next
proceed.
participant.
We should proceed, I think.
Yeah, yeah, we should proceed.
Then
The
next
next participant
participant,
is Promiti Roy.
Promiti Roy. Professor Roy, are you in the session, in this session? Are you in this conference? Professor Promiti Roy?
Actually, the problem is the government of West Bengal, I mean, Election Commission is conducting training, and they have started it from today, and all college and university teachers and employees were picked up. So this could be a
Yes,
problem for Pankaj, this could be a problem for Anando and for Promiti Rai also.
we have a training
Sir,
too
sir,
tomorrow.
I am here. I can present.
Okay, Pankaj has gone. Okay, Pankaj,
I
you
have come
just,
outside the room of my presiding officer training.
I understand. You just present your paper and leave.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's in fact near about 12. So my topic is fieldwork in the post-pandemic era. Here I have tried to discuss that COVID-19 has had an insightful force within the research community and has forced many researchers to scale back their research and data collections plan. Executing planned field research suddenly became uncertain because of the global pandemic. Ongoing movement restrictions, lockdown, border closing even, and the social distancing measures have led to the rethinking on the how researchers collect data, what data they collect, and the amount of data that is being collected in what are the ways they have to, I mean, think about the new way. The new normal is something that we need to tackle with. At the start of this year, one of our field visits and potential meeting with collaborations did not push through. When the all the we have seen that throughout the world, they are closing the borders. We have to adapt our field work plans in the new reality. There are very few historical analog to guide us through the process when the anything like this has happened in the future in the past. Our current experience tells us that some flexibility in system and process, not at the expense of rigor in the data in integrity, are needed in doing field work in the time of COVID-19. More importantly, endangering a system of trust and mutual respect when working with the offsite team are essential for the effective collaborations. Technology can play a very role in this area of research because what we have seen that's right now the we can collect data through the Googles and the other earlier we used to collect the data through the telephonic conversations that we can through this uh, Google app and other technological advancement. While collecting data is important, it should always be done with everybody's safety in mind. In the new normal, doing fieldwork implies re-examining our research methodological, logistical, theoretical, and the ethical rigor in light of the current socio-physical distancing measures. Technology can address some of the new concern in doing fieldwork, especially in bringing spatial gap in on the field and it has increasingly become an integral part of doing fieldwork in the era of physical distancing. Here I want to add one of the example, like my supervisor is sitting here, sir. He's telling that see, always try to revisit your field. I have done my PhD and I have done my field work in 2010, 2009 and 2010. And after 10 years, he has advised me, I have revisited my field in the months of 2020. So after 10 years, I have seen some of the things. I have taken time from our those people whom I have visited. They have given me time, but I have a problem. Has the problem with the people because they are not able to meet. And after that, when the pandemic has started, lockdown has started, they have abruptly they are saying no, we won't meet you. We won't share all the some of the things which has been changed because I have revisited my field after the 10 years. So many changes I have seen. I have done my field work in that's a Jadugoran Ghatsila area of where the uranium mining and that mining adjoining where the people has been rehabilitated after the displacement. So I want to again re-examine their positions. But now again I am calling them. They are not able to respond me in the good manner because they are saying still distancing and all safety measures you have to take. We are not taking any sort of risk because you will come all through the Kolkata. So this is one of the problem that we have to rethink about our data collection and other things. And one more thing, when we are going for the observation, participatory observations, which we are earlier doing, as I have also done, it's not possible during the pandemic. Right now also, like the movement of the people, the trains are not going well. So this is also one of the problem where we are facing lot of trouble. Although technology is playing very important role, we can see the doing all these things on the so many technological platform. But see, when I am doing research in the rural area, people are not well aware. They are aware, but some of the students. But these are the problem we are facing.
Okay, just conclude.
Okay, so in the pandemic era, we have to see the new way how we can consider, and we have to frame the how we can collect the data, the medium. So this is a new techniques that we have to come up, and then we can think about how to collect the data in the field. Because sociology is the things which has been I have also read. I have been told tell my supervisor also, see whatever the field is saying that you have to say. But here we are facing problem. We are not going to become a group participant.
Okay,
We are not.
Pankaj,
This is
understand why I understand the issues.
yeah,
There have been writings of late. I don't know whether you know it on digital ethnography.
yeah.
Professor Maitri Chaudhary has a blog where Dhanashika Ghosh has written on digital ethnography, and the University of Zurich is organizing a workshop on 28th of February on this digital ethnography, doing field work during pandemic. This is just because of the fact that this pandemic, Corona, is going to stay till for almost for 7 years. But researcher cannot. I mean, research cannot be stopped. You got a scholarship for 3 years, 3.5 years. For how long?
Yeah.
How many years your university will give you extension? So it's not possible. Given all these constraints, researchers are coming up with alternatives, and you need to look for alternatives. And alternatives are always possible in social science research. So with these few words, I think, Pankaj, you are busy in receiving training from the
Yeah. Sir.
So if there is one or two very brief questions to Pankaj by anyone, yeah. Okay, you are relieved.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So Prashanjit, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Prashanjit, yeah, you may call the next participant.
Next speaker is Dr. Bharat Malakar. Dr. Bharat Malakar from Mahishadal Girls College. Dr. Malakar, are you present in this session? Dr. Bharat Malakar, sir, it seems that he too has been inducted by Election Commission.
Yeah. We have chosen a wrong time. This conference, your thing should have been on Sunday.
Exactly. Right. Dr. Bharat Malakar.
Call the next person.
Then Professor Shubhinita Pal. Professor Shubhinita Pal.
Yeah, she's there. Shubhinita, please begin.
প্রসেনজিৎ দা,
হ্যাঁ বল।
বলছি আমার মনে হয় যারা জয়েন করতে পারছে না এক্ষুনি একটা সুযোগ তাদের দেবেন পরে।
হ্যাঁ, মানে লিংকটা তো থাকছে, আমরা ওয়েট করব।
হ্যাঁ, আরেকটা সুযোগ যেন তারা পায়। হ্যাঁ, ঠিক আছে।
হ্যাঁ, মানে যারা প্রেজেন্ট নেই আর কি একেবারে। হ্যাঁ। ওকে, প্রফেসর Shubhinita,
start.
Sir has given you the green signal. Please start.
Any problem, Shubhinita? Your microphone is on. Please start.
Professor
Hello,
Shubhita,
sir, am I not audible? I have already started.
you're audible right now.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay, I'm Shubhita Pal, Assistant Professor of University of Kolani in their BVoc in Journalism and Mass Communication course. First of all, I would like to inform or apologize that the research paper proposed here in the abstract has not been completed yet. Therefore, I want to present my paper as a proposal and open for any suggestions from the chair and my fellow colleagues. My topic is extension of awareness vis-a-vis extent of activity, rethinking behavioral attitude of corporate public during COVID-19. So, if we can trace back to November 2019 or December 2019, we can see that although the first outbreak of novel coronavirus was there, still no other country neither had taken any serious steps, and India was no exception. The international borders were open, international flights were on, and crowds and gatherings were also permitted. So this phenomena lasted till first week of March, when we were taking the coronavirus in a very humorous and satirical way. That what kind of virus can do like that. But just right after the first week of March, there's a panic has started, not only in India but also worldwide. That this virus can be dangerous. Government was about to announce the lockdown. The educational institute started shutting down on 16th of March, and also the corporate houses started the work from home culture by the end of March. So there was a paradigm shift between from first week of March to the last week of March. So everything has started changing. And if we said, I am setting my theoretical framework of this particular research proposal after James E. Grunick's situational theory, where he has proposed that there are four types of public. First is non-public, who does not face a problem, neither recognize the problem, and therefore does not take any action to get rid of the problem. Next is latent, who faces the problem but does not recognize it. Then aware, who faces and also recognizes the problem but doesn't do anything to get out of it. And then lastly is active public, who faces the problem, recognize the problem, and also organize to do something to get out of it. So from November 2019 to March 2020, the public of corporate organizations shifted from an extent of awareness to activity, from a mere non-public or latent phase to a very active phase. So that in how much that has changed their behavioral situation and attitude. And I want to trace back with the help of two variables. That first is work from home culture and its adaptability, and the extra stress on corporate social responsibility that our corporate houses has done, like extra stresses on corporate social responsibility during the lockdown. So the research methodology that I have particularly chosen is ethnographic descriptive research through focus group discussions and in-depth interviews. As the unit of analysis of my paper is people and not the content. So, as I've said earlier, that this paper is still in a very nascent stage, and the research proposal, therefore, it is only a research proposal and not a finished paper. Therefore, I would like to take the opportunity of this webinar for valuable suggestions from the chair and from my fellow colleagues and everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, it's over to the dais for question answer, comments. If there are questions, if there are comments. Yeah, this is a very wonderful paper on the behavioral aspect of, rethinking the behavioral attitude in corporate public during COVID-19.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if there are questions. So you were working on the way awareness could be expanded. Hello?
Exactly, sir. Exactly, sir.
And the kind of activity there attached to particularly corporate sector.
Exactly,
Okay.
public related to corporate.
Okay, so during COVID-19, do you think there is anything special that the corporate sectors are picking up?
Yes, sir. The work from home culture is something very new.
Okay, the thing that we are doing now, if you look into the literature, literature on domestic violence, literature on violence against women, they all predict that. I mean, some of them also have seen that the extent there is extension on the rise in the number of violence being committed against women, particularly at home, because of the fact that the man who was staying back at home could do surveillance on their activities, could impose their desire on the woman who was on the other side. But there is a other view also, other view of the side, that because people who are living with the family and could guide their children, could help their family members, wives and other family members, could take care of their parents, which was not possible for those who were working at office, say 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., those who are in the corporate sector in particular. So on the one hand, there is a rise in domestic violence, there is a rise in authoritarianism, but on the other hand, there is a rise in social capital of people who are in the family circle, rise of benevolence, rise of helping people. So both the things are happening at the same time, right? Now the question is, who is doing what? Who is doing what? So this is a quite critical question. It's linked to occupation. It is linked to class. It is linked to several other social issues. So if you are able to bring out who are involved in committing crimes or domestic violence and who are actually helping their wives in cooking, managing the children, taking care of children's education, taking care of parents, or talking to the neighbors, or maybe talking to their friends over phone because they are free now.
Exactly, sir.
The other part of it is it the fact that the corporates are putting so much pressure on the people who are staying at home and giving so much of work to them that you do this much of work since you are at home. You work during a period which is not a working period. So much of work stress being put on people who are working from home.
Yes, sir.
Is not it? So this thing is quite complicated. I think you would be looking into all these issues. Thank you for looking into these complex and complicated issues, and I believe your paper will come up with brilliant suggestions and findings. So, Prasenjit Chattopadhyay, you must proceed now.
Sir, now it is the turn of Sarbojit Rai Chaudhuri from Vivekananda Mahavidyalaya, Horipal, Hooghly. Professor Sarbojit Rai Chaudhuri, it is your turn now. Are you present in the conference, in the virtual conference seminar? Professor Sarbojit Rai Chaudhuri. Sir, I am afraid that he too has been inducted by the Election Commission. I don't know. Professor Sarbojit Rai Chaudhuri.
No, he is not there. I saw his name is not listed in the link. So call the next person.
Next, Mr. Abirbhav Bhattacharjee.
Yeah, he is there.
Yes.
Please.
Okay, Honorable Chair, other speakers, co-speakers, and the eminent scholars. My proposed topic is named as Restoration and Rearrangement of Public Health in India, a post-COVID discussion. So am I clearly audible?
Absolutely.
Okay, here you go. Okay, now COVID-19 is unquestionably, it was a big issue for health, public health, to manage not only for developing but also for developed country. We have seen that what happened with. Okay, so what we've seen in this period is a PPP model, public-private partnership. It was came in front. Now, after for almost 10 to 11 months, it's running, and this thing is working on say with some doubt. This is what working fine, and now the numbers of patients is being decreased, and a vaccination with some contradiction have started. Anyway, so where is the question of restoration and rearrangement of public health in this context? That is restoration in terms that there are several critical disease and issues in public health that are being neglected since April 2020. this paper is based on primarily on secondary experience and secondarily on primary experience. The primarily secondary experience is my friends and colleagues from several medical colleges. They are actually serving as COVID warrior. Anyway, so the frontline workers, they are day by day in during pandemic situation, during lockdown, they have told that several wards and units are hereby closed, and that results and that results in great neglect on that patient. And my personal experience is my father with a cancer patient is under the checkup of Tata Memorial, and he was informed just before 10 to 15 days of our journey to Mumbai. That was March 2020, and that you should not come here. The situation is going out of our hand. So in this position, this was inevitable, but still some kind of other diseases that they are in critical position that are being neglected. So in this issue, when and now one more thing is coming forward, that is the PPP model of health pattern. What was established before COVID, that is fine, but during COVID, some private setup was undertaken by government in the name of PPP. Anyhow, that was running fine, I told earlier. So that was being revoked. And when it was being revoked by the government, as the situation, quote unquote, is under control. So this time, after the government undertaking will be withdrawn, the situation should be or maybe out of the control for the public, for the common public. So in this way, for this, I propose to look after these things, the rate charts, and the services of those infrastructures, not only by sanitizing and etc., providing those things. Not only this, but a continuous monitoring, surveillance should be maybe required to get proper outcome from this in proper value for money. Okay, so that is, and this experience, if we take this COVID situation as in experience, and then policy level impact in, and I have mentioned there in abstract that functional efficiency and structural development, if we can run this parallelly after taking the experience from this COVID situation, this COVID pandemic situation. Anyway, so research and development in health and the structural level development and the functional efficiency could be, if we taking the inputs from this, it may accelerate or it may reopen the new paradigms in public health. What my intention is that I would like to develop this paper on the basis that what was actually neglected. I have intention that in a rural hospital or in a district hospital, a particular department, like gynecology or any other department, those have the rural, the real experience. I would go by some interview methodology and others. So what real experience, what they had told me unofficially that I would record and put into this. That was my intention, and obviously for behind this the project Dr. Rajesh Das is running. That influenced me a lot. He is running an amazing project on this. But anyway, for this he was out of this webinar. Anyhow, so that inspired me to talk something on public health and the restoration of public health after post-COVID. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Avirbhav. Actually, you have brought in the very salient issue in the contemporary time, and we were exposed to the realities that public health was in disdain, was in bad shape. Even though scholars were writing on these, even though the several government documents have been, notifying all these, this has been a scenario all over the world that public in new liberal era in particular, where the governments one after another have started ignoring the issue of public health. Now, actually, we are back to a scenario where probably the state should invest more and more. But this is a complicated scenario. With the states more and more privatizing, universities, railway, LIC, and whatnot, agenda of privatization is so looming large. Even in the agricultural sector, there is a private initiative being initiated by the state, where it is quite doubtful whether the state in India or any other part of the world would really bring back the issue of agenda of public health, reinvigorating or redesigning the public health infrastructure. The basic question would be from where the money would come, right? So the basic question that the state would ask, and obviously, whenever we ask for public money, public finance, they say, well, why do you protest then against petrol prices? Petrol prices would go up because state has very little avenue for earning. So the other day I was listening to Baba Ramdev, who was defending the public price in the saying that the money goes to the national exchequer. So, in a state where many developing countries are facing, fund crunch, and there has been a pressure on giving away to the public endeavors to the private, and there has been efforts on the part of many states to sell even the lucrative and profitable public sector units. I wonder whether it would whether the public health sector would really revive in India or not. I am really doubtful. Yeah, if there are questions. Yeah, this is a very wonderful area where you can comment. You can pass your,
With this, sir, budget in this budget, central budget, that we can see 200%. I mean, double of health budget was increased, but it was already allotted. It was allotted for COVID for 60% and 40% for general budget, general health. So that is actually decreased in altogether.
Yeah. In real sense, it is decreased. Anyway,
Yes.
Anyway. So if there are questions. If there are questions, you see, I'm really surprised that when Amartya Sen got Nobel Prize, he talked about health and education, right? These are the two models that health indicators of related to education. They are very important in measuring development index of a country, but we are stressing less on all these. Okay, so where in new liberal area where many countries are moving towards, there's absolutely no answer to all these.
No, I have a beautiful observation here. That is that the book got Nobels are the Nobel book, and they should keep in the shelf to gallery. Even I was going through the capital in 21st century, and there I just read the introduction and thought, how these books can got Nobel Prize.
So the people whom you give prize for bringing out very significant ideas, you don't yourself believe in all those ideas.
For ideal, I think for ideal, not in concrete words. They are ideal. They have got Nobel. Okay, that's it. But not in.
So this calls for manipulation and duplicacy that is there in contemporary world. Whatever we say, we don't work, and whatever we believe, we don't really actualize it. So anyway, I'm researching currently on the arrival of a post-truth society, and I have also written on this. These are aspects of a post-truth society where the clear line between truth and false is not seen, and many of the state leaders and media centers use lie in order to manipulate our sentiments. Anyway, this is a different agenda. Prashant Babu, please call the other person. Next person.
Jyoti Datto is in the next turn. A research scholar from St. Xavier's University, Kolkata. Jyoti Datto.
Honorable, good afternoon, Honorable Chair and rest of my paper presenters. I have a paper presentation to, can I share the slides? I'm just presenting. Okay, so. So my screen is visible, sir?
Not yet. Yeah, it's now. It's coming.
Yes, sir. Oops. So wait. So just. So what is happening? Sir, I'm doing the slideshows. Sir, myself, Jyoti Datto, state-aided college teacher, Department of Journalism, Mass Communication, Khidipur College, and I'm doing my PhD research scholar from Department of Mass Communication, St. Xavier's University. So my topic is health communication during pandemic, a case study on 24-hour news channel in West Bengal. My introduction is mass media played a very important role in creating awareness among the general public and in dissemination of government orders, guidelines to health workers, sanitation workers, including police at grassroots level. Media also promoted hand washing, personal hygiene, social distancing norm, reporting the COVID cases around the world. My objective was to understand the role and impact of 24-hour news channel in the general public during COVID-19 pandemic, TV viewing before and during the lockdown, to understand the public perception about the trustworthiness of the news channel during COVID-19 crisis in Bengal. My methodology was based on primary and secondary data. I have done an online survey, and this I've distributed questionnaires, and the data was collected between the 23rd June to 3rd July 2020. This was the scenario that during the COVID lockdown, I have seen that there was a digital shift. TV viewing and internet got a majority share, whereas newspaper, radio, and magazines got limited share of preference pattern during the mass viewing during the COVID-19 and the lockdown. This was the highlights, news channel highlight. It started from January when WHO declared that novel coronavirus public health emergency. Followed by February, we saw China as the main hotspot. Then WHO declared in March that the Janta curfew and the 21 days vigorous lockdown. April, we saw the initiative from our PM that lighting at 9 baje, 9 minutes. Italy became the hotspot, and the major there was a issue of the gathering at Nizamuddin. Then the second lockdown was announced. In the May, we got a highlight of the migrant laborers traveling all across. Then Shamik Express started. The footages of the clean environment were shown in the media, and the America again was highlighted at the major hotspot of virus, and Mumbai became the hotspot too in India. In June, the reopening of the various shopping complex, the new guidelines and protocols were maintained. Rapid increase in the case of lockdown and increase in the viruses, and in the basic in the major cities where like Kerala and Mumbai was showcased. Delhi became the hotspot, new focus of hotspot. Now, the preference of the news network in Bengal, according to the Broadcast Audience Research Council, that in Bengal we saw 24 Ghanta getting the majority share, followed by then Zee 24 Ghanta, Kolkata TV, News 18, and Calcutta News. Next, according to the finding, ABP Anando emerged as the first choice preference among the viewers for news consumption at the time of the crisis. During the Janta curfew, again, it was most preferred news network. It has a viewership grew rapidly we have seen that 32 crore individuals have watched within the week during the time of the lockdown from March 21st to 27, 2020. Now, what was the highlights, media news highlights during the COVID-19? WHO declared that the COVID-19 as a global pandemic in the March 11, 2020. Then the news media started focusing on the shortage of PPT kits in the health worker. 22nd March, lockdown, Janta curfew was announced by our PM. Then 25 March, we entered into the phase of the first lockdown in 21 days vigorous lockdown. Followed by a 5th April, we were beginning with the festivity mood of lighting. It was called a mini Diwali, when when balconies were filled up with diyas at 9 o'clock for 9 minutes. In April, the Nizamuddin Massacre happened, where number of people gathered over there were turned COVID positive. Then, excuse me. migrant labor working miles to reach their homes. And then in the last point we showed that the clean footage were given the priority in the news channels, that in clean environment and clean air. Now the preference of the use of mass media during the pandemic, we've seen that news channels were given the maximum preference because of its authenticity, followed by social media, whereas newspapers and radios got less coverage or less preference. Now the role of news media during the pandemic, that the media played a important role in tracking and giving a live update on the dashboard. Advantage, taking it an advantage, people can be motivated about the safety measures to contain and spread the diseases. The initiative run by television medias like social distancing, safe at home, say be safe, face covers mandatory in public, COVID-19s, and washing hand, stay healthy, or avoid COVID-19. These were the initiatives that were run in the television news channels, and we were adhering to the sort of messages that we were receiving from the television news. Now, what was the limitations or the challenges? Extensive coverage made the people feel dazed. In the pandemic, false and misleading information was spreading rapidly from different media. Social isolation was associated with psychological change among the individual. It incorporated a feeling of loneliness, anxiety, and depression. Exaggeration of news related to COVID-19 was done by TV, created a sense of panic among the public at large. And, and the conclusion was this, that according to WHO, it involves a coordination of responders and proper health information system managing the communication risk. Media played a crucial role at each step. The methods of news reporting modify the behavior of the public and the attitude, and indeed the media played a vital role. And the news channels were giving kudos. They were supporting the campaigns along with giving us a live updates of the minute details. It found that the reader who spend over an hour reading before newspapers or reading magazines or newspaper declined during the lockdown, and they shift from print to digital media. And that brings me to the last, and thank you. That's it, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Jyoti. If there are questions, comments.
Excuse me, sir. This is Pramiti Roy here, sir. Actually, Subrata sir said to have a talk with you. Actually, I was
informed about your presence.
Just wait, Pramiti.
Okay, okay, sure, sir, sure, sir. Okay. Sorry, actually, he told me to just tell you regarding after the session. Right, okay,
so
thank you.
If there are questions for Jyoti, comments for Jyoti, please share the paper on the media, the way media behaves, and the way we react. We listen to news and the way we react to those news. Quite apparent in everybody's life today. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm asking others to comment.
Okay, sir.
Well, I'm surprised that you all have come to present your paper and you have nothing to say so far as others' papers are concerned. You see, Jyoti, you are dealing with a very interesting aspect of contemporary life. The media. Media is argued to be the fifth pillar of a democracy.
Yes,
sir. But of late, if you look into the writings of a friend of mine, P. Sainath, I believe all of you know P. Sainath. He was there with me when I was doing my research in JNU. He was equally there in sociology department doing his MPhil. P. Sainath says that where is the mass in mass media? Do mass media really cater to the needs of mass? So this is an issue being raised by P. Sainath. The other issue being raised by Maitri Chaudhary, he says that media projects a sunny side of India. Sunny side, shining. Everything is shining.
Yes, sir.
They do not project what is reality. For instance, economy. You won't listen. You won't hear about Indian economy going down in contemporary phase. And when the budget was presented in Parliament by another friend of mine, Nirmala, it was some media channels, 3 to 5 media channels went on saying that Nirmala ji present paper budget पेश कर रहे हैं और पाकिस्तान के प्रधानमंत्री का काप रहे हैं. Imran Khan is shaking, Imran Khan or Pakistanis are shaking. I fail to understand what is the relation between Nirmala presenting her budget and Pakistani chief minister or prime minister being shaken. So media, the way the media manipulates our attention, the way media turns our attention to certain other things, right? So this is something that is needed. And I can tell you about a PhD thesis done by a person called Abir Chattopadhyay from Kolkata University. I was there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
He worked on the way media creates simulation using Baudrillard's use of simulation, simulacra. He said how it simulates, how it actually draws people towards the market, how actually it manipulates opinion. So you could also include social media, the way social media, WhatsApp, the key paper presenter has already talked about Instagram and tweets. So I think this is a very interesting area. You need to focus more on the way media creates a kind of behavior and the way the media. It's not enough to say that media influences. We are aware of it. Media is a very specific role, right? It's a media-centric society, but how it creates, what kind of opinion, what kind of notion, what kind of images, I would say illusory images, sort of invention of nation, something is being invented which is not real.
Sir, I totally agree with you. And I know, sir, now with the elections, with Vidhan Sabha election, upcoming election, the total scenario has changed. And even during the Galwan crash between the India and China, the focus altogether shifted from the COVID to the some other. They create agenda. But sir, I did not take social media because I was taking the news media. That's why I did not touch. But yes, it was there in my mind, sir, that social media definitely, and they filled a sort of misinformation in the society, social media. And I wanted to focus this by saying that news media was considered a more authentic sort of when it comes to acceptance of message. And yes, I totally agree that they set agenda and we follow those agendas.
Okay, what my suggestion is, you could do a content analysis. For instance, what does Anandabazar Putrika publishes in the front page? You take a chronology of publication, and what does Ganashakti, a sort of Marxist newspaper, publishes? What is the stress on? Maybe, I'm not asking for Anandabazar or Ganashakti. You may choose your own newspaper. The second thing, who reads? Who reads what, and how actually they accept news. The way newspaper has an impact. Whether people really believe in what Anandabazar says, what Ganashakti says, or what the Republic TV says. Do really people believe in all this, right? So and then if there is an effort to construct opinion, to construct news. Newspaper agencies do not tell us what is news. They rather construct news fast and then they tell us this is the news. Now, do we really, believe that this has been constructed?
Okay.
Do we really think that this has been constructed? So I should not believe in this news. I should rather think about myself. What I'm saying is the subjectivity issue. Whether I'm a subject or an object. Whether media treats me as an object and I accept blindly whatever is being said to me, or I am a subject. I am a thinking animal. I can react. I can, generate my own understanding of what is true and what is not true.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, if I see Nirmala sometime in Delhi, I would certainly ask her a question. How are you related to Imran Khan? Tell me. Obviously, she would ponder about my question. I would, because how is her budget presentation related to Imran Khan being shaken?
Exactly, sir. I also could not understand that why India's budget has to do with Pakistan's.
Exactly. And if you go to Amazon, Netflix, any media, YouTube, you open any film, any serial, there is an ad will come.
Yes, sir.
And the ad will now the ad will come and ad will tell about budget and this and that. Now, do we really believe in whatever is being said to us?
Definitely, sir.
Or people have started disbelieving. People have started, making the distinction between true and false. This is quite interesting for many of us to know.
Okay, sir. Okay.
So instead of how many people are reading, you shift your focus to critical issues. That will be a wonderful contribution to the body of literature. Okay,
Okay.
Prashanjit Babu, please
Thank
call the
you.
next person.
Thank you, sir, for your suggestion. I'll definitely work upon it, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Sure, sure.
স্যার আমরা কি প্রমিতি রয়কে ডেকে নেব না এই লিস্টে নেক্সট যিনি ছিলেন তাকে ডাকবো? স্যার hello.
Yeah, Pramiti, can you present your paper?
Yes, sir. I'm ready. Sir, only if you can allow me. Hello. Very good afternoon, sir. Sir, I'm ready with the paper.
Okay, you present your paper.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Firstly, I really apologize because I had so many official assignments today. I had 5 back-to-back classes which I actually already had to attend. But having said that, I really thank my co-presenters, definitely respected chairperson, sir, for allowing me to present my paper, and for my respected co-chairperson, sir, and of course the co-presenters also for allowing me to present my paper. Really sorry for the inconvenience caused. Okay, so I think to start off with, my paper is essentially talking about the profession of public relations. So, this paper is all about the paradigm shift in the profession of public relations post the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. So this is the title of my paper. So I would like to begin what exactly public relation is. So I would like to speak on that a little, and then of course I'll go ahead with what exactly my paper focuses on. So in this era of globalization, the most of the multinational companies making concrete efforts to manage and maintain its relationship with its customers. It goes without saying. Most of the multinational companies have its public relation department, as we all know, that makes all effort to monitor the attitude and perception of the customers. Now, public relation is often referred to the variety of activities conducted by a company to promote and protect the image of the company, its products and policies in the eyes of the public. Now, we do know who are these publics, internal publics as well as the external publics. Thus, it aims to manage public opinion of the organization. Public relation encompasses a broad range of activities. The major areas are discussed below, with particular attention given to those used for most frequently in brand communication campaigns. So I think now I'll shift to what exactly this paper of mine really focuses on. At the wake of this hour, now more than ever, in this historic, unprecedented chapter of the global pandemic, has thrown one of the biggest challenges to this particular practice of public relation as a profession. Considering the following, there is widespread panic, often categorized by misinformation as the reported cases rise. Hospitals do not have capacity to deal with the crisis, sending alarm bells ringing. The stress of social distancing and lockdowns are affecting focus and performance as well. Every business and service has been affected along with its customers, goes without saying. During and post the moment of crisis, a symmetrical cooperation is what is needed. And that was actually witnessed in the state, non-state and corporate organization levels as well. The mode of communication among the said institution focused on a conformity liaison-based communication. This served as a bottom line conception of public relation as a profession. The present paper will try to analyze whether the communication ecology is the need of the hour, which should essentially be based on mutual understanding among the target population. A liaison-based communication in any multi-level diversified crisis period helps to reduce different forms of stigma in particular and discrimination in general in the intra as well as the inter-level vis-a-vis the biological, psychological, and the state-level crisis. The qualitative analysis will serve as the research methodology for this paper, and case studies along with selective in-depth interviews can lead to new contributions to the existing knowledge. Sir, this has been, one of the few, I actually made it very, very short as far as the particular method or, how to go about it, to kind of, change the paradigm of this particular study, because, I'm trying to do it from a very professional level, as in, to analyze public relation from the professional aspect, not to the theory aspect as much. So definitely, I guess that case studies will actually be handy whenever we have to, kind of dive into the paradigm of this particular paper. So, sir, that's it from my end. So,
okay, thank you. Thank you, Pramiti. Now, if there are questions, comments.
Thank you so much, sir.
Comments.
Thank you.
Jyoti is there, Shubhinita is there, Avirbhav is there. If you have any question, any comment? Yeah, Pramiti, you know,
why we are not
Sir, sorry. Sorry, sir.
Yes, Avirbhav, please.
okay, I was not interrupting because of this, that you are here where we will talk, that will be a mere comment, but what you will say, that will be the aid for this paper, upcoming paper. That is why we are not interrupting.
No, these are opportunities for you all to react also. Okay,
absolutely.
So if you have anything to say. Okay, Pramiti, you see, all pandemic, if you look into the history of pandemic,
right, sir.
All pandemics have contributed to certain new things.
Absolutely.
So obviously, the current pandemic has come out with a new impetus for looking into public relations again as a sort of thing. I believe when we are studying in schools and colleges, public relation was the kind of job where people used to apply, right? But when actually after 10, 15 years, probably companies have stopped doing that. Because you don't need any public relations officer, and many of most of the offices do not in fact have any public relations office. They rather call it by different name.
Yes, sir.
Name
So
is
we have the public relation agencies as well, of course, where we can get the expert opinion from.
You outsource certain activities and you don't maintain it. Yeah, but now you have to do it because of pandemic.
Absolutely.
So obviously something new is coming out. Something new is coming up. Now the question is whether that kind of innovation on the part of any company or any institution is going to benefit the society. How it is going to benefit the society? How it is going to benefit people who are actually looking for information?
Right, sir. Right, sir. I personally feel, sir, that right now what the world is actually, the entire world. So it's actually the entire cry and UN cry for the entire humanity as well. That people needs to be way more impersonal. People needs to actually be a little more empathetic. So I personally feel now, of course, it is a profession first. The entire concept of public relation is a profession first. But I personally feel that now the internal public needs to be a little more looked after. This is something which I feel, because now every one of us are in a different set of, it's a complete different mindset. So it's a hell of a mindset that we are actually following. So if we are a little empathetic, if the public relation officers, like I said, if it's like a conformity liaison based kind of a relationship that we are able to kind of have or bond with that of the internal public, essentially, because it is the employees who definitely will serve as one of the most important tools for also taking the productivity level of the company or the corporate or corporate house to a different level from here on, because now we all know what is the exact position and exact state of the Indian economy as well. I mean, as compared to the world economy also. So I personally feel, sir, now we have to be a little more empathetic towards our employees. That's, I think, the first and foremost and important thing to do as far as the PR department is concerned. And I guess, we have to be a little more personally attached with them as well, because I completely I can take in the fact that, of course, that there is the external public in the form of media, in the form of stakeholders, the other stakeholders in form of government. But what? Sorry, Bishop.
I got it.
Yes,
whatever you're saying, I got it. My question is, whose interest do peers serve?
Sorry, sir, I could not get the question.
Whose interest these peer public relation officers serve? Do they serve the interest of the manager or entrepreneur, or do they serve the interest of public or employees? Often it is being said, and many sociologists have commented, industrial sociologists, that this creation of a new post called public relations officers or corporate managers, so on and so forth, was basically to manage the dark side of managerial activities.
Right, sir. Right, sir. So I would like to say that it is actually, so it's a very interesting point, definitely, that you had made, that, whose interest are they serving, which is
Yeah.
absolutely correct. I mean, definitely, although they are representing their organization, their business enterprise or their corporate house, but I personally feel, sir, it is definitely a very mutual kind of an interest that they should be, actually, they have to be a bridge between the client and the organization. I mean, the client and the PR firm, and also the organization's relationship with that of media as well.
Okay.
So that's what I
Yeah,
feel.
Prasenjit Babu, could you please call the other person, next person?
Yes, sir. Amrita Mukherjee from Bhupendranath Datta Smriti Mahavidyalaya.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Madam Mukherjee, please. Amrita Mukherjee.
Amrita is not there. Amrita Mukherjee is not there. You call the next person?
Next is Ankita Ghosh and Subrata Chatterjee.
Yeah, Ankita Ghosh is present.
Please, madam.
Yes, sir. My topic name is COVID-19 pandemic and feminist perspective. Um, It is true that irrespective of gender, caste, religion, entire human society is facing a challenge due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But here remains a question: is the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic equal to all sectors of our society? If we analyze deeply, we will see that there is a dimensional difference in this effect. COVID-19 pandemic has specially affected an woman. When we are talking about COVID-19 and its effect, we consider it as a general problem of man and woman both. If we see it from feminist perspective, we cannot consider it as a general problem to man and woman. In pandemic situation, women's social position seeks a special attention from us. Feminists claim that patriarchy divides our society into two domains, internal and external. They determine the external domain for men and another domain is for women exclusively. Patriarchy projects some argument in the favor of division. They claims that women are weak physically and mentally. They are not able to think rationally. Women are emotional. So women cannot cope up with themselves in this external domain. For this reason, internal domain is determined for women. Patriarchy shows that this area of our society is beyond any political relationship. It is very sophisticated. It's prioritized women emotion, etc. The question have been arised from feminist perspective that how safe the internal domain is. Th- um, Domestic violence, sexual abuses has been increased with the spread of COVID-19. 31.1% women have reported their torture by their husband in India. This instance shows that being at home does not mean women are safe. Feminist shows that internal domain are not beyond political and power relation, which is opposite to to patriarchal claim. COVID-19 pandemic brings a lockdown throughout India. This situation has emerged a severe economic crisis which impact is very crucial for a developing country like India, especially for women. In the article, How COVID-19 Might Change Indian Feminist Narratives for Eternity, Aniba Judan shows that in a country where labor force and job opportunity seem to masculizing with every passing day, the menace of COVID-19 make it nearly impossible for 121.8 and 28 million female rural and urban workers to go out back there in the working domain. many women of our country who have already been exploited and oppressed by patriarchal structure and associated with are associated with unorganized sector from here. They provide their livelihood. Due to the lockdown, they have sacked. Now they are oppressed by two way, and one is patriarchal structure and another is economically also. Patriarchy imposes some characteristic on women, such as women are kind, they are benevolent in everywhere, they are they are very serviceable, and also be very emotional. Patriarchy associates such qualities with inferiority. But feminist philosopher and sociologist Carol Gilligan has found out a very positive sense from such such qualities and make a different way of thinking. She has developed a new vision of ethics, care based ethics. The main concern of care based ethics is care. In pandemic situation, when government suggests us to stay at home and maintain physical distance among us, mental attachment is really needed for us. In this context of our society, care-based ethics become more relevant. O- we must be aware that their features of woman nature did not be treated as a weakness of them. So we can see that COVID-19 pandemic has really made a different effect on women, which is distinct from men. Um, Still, this situation enhances the value of care ethics, which is very significant to our world. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ankita, for presenting a paper. If there are questions, comments. Yeah, Jyoti, you have any question?
Sir, the paper presentation was very nice. The topic she touched and she spoke about is very nice. Uh, Domestic violence and vigorous lockdown, torture against women were reportedly shown in the newspaper and was reported in the television media as well. I think it's
Okay.
nice that she quoted the feministic philosophers as well. It's nice, sir. I liked it.
Any other comment? Any other question? So, we have been researching on this aspect too, and there are many areas on which probably one can project too. Beyond domestic violence, there are increasing instances of trafficking in women and children. There are increasing instances of child marriages being committed. There are increasing instances of domestic labor being thrown out, being deprived of the job. There are instances of migrant laborer who return back at one point of time, and now they are stuck to their own village because they cannot go back. They cannot go back with the children. At one point of time, they could manage to live with their husband or people close to them at a distant place, but now they cannot move out. So there are many other issues probably which our women are facing, and probably this makes a good paper to look into the feminist approach to evaluate the kind of situation that women face. Now, feminists always say, whether you take you take any variety of feminism, they always presume that women are a separate category, and during any kind of eventuality, any kind of say negative eventuality, like pandemic situation, like earthquake, like drought situation, like amla, that kind of cyclone, it is the women and children who become the target first, whether it is for physical torture or for many other kind of exploitation that you have correctly mentioned. Now, point is, what is the way out? What is the way out? Obviously, feminists would ask for a kind of society where patriarchal ideology is no more there. The legal Marxist and other kind of feminists would argue for structural changes in the society. So, I believe beyond all these, there could be many other things that we need to do and look into this aspect. If there are one or two comments more on the last paper being presented. Prashanjit Babu, you have any question?
Not exactly, sir. We can invite our last presenter, Srimati Pritha Misro from.
I don't think she is there.
Oh.
I don't think she is there. I didn't see her list in the number of participants who are there. If there is one or two who are left, I mean, if there is anyone whose name actually we could not call because you did not get the link of the
Sir,
first visit.
should
Yes.
we tell their names, and if they are here, they can participate?
Yes.
Ananda Mohan Kaur.
No, he is not there.
Dr. Bharat Malakar, Sarbojit Raychaudhuri, অমৃতা মুখার্জি। না স্যার কেউই নেই বলে মনে হচ্ছে।
So Prashanjit Babu, you just say a few words so far as your understanding of the papers being presented or the kind of scenario in which we are organizing this conference. If you have to say something, just say use this time to say your own personal opinion.
Though I am hailing from a completely different discipline, my discipline is English literature, but literature and literary theories have a very bad habit to poke their noses everywhere in the sociolinguistic theories, sociological constructs. So far I have realized from these papers that the papers are really well researched and really illuminating, and they got another dimension of enlightenment from your chair, sir, because you have elucidated the papers, the contents very lucidly for laymen like me. So it must be a wonderful session, and I would like to know whether our IQAC coordinator, Dr. Pulokesh Sen, or our convener, Dr. Sanjeev Talukdar, is here. Dr. Pulokesh Sen or Dr. Sanjeev Talukdar?
Yes, Prashanjit, it's a very nice session. We had with us 4, 5, 6, 7 speakers.
7 speakers, and very illuminating.
Okay, it's fine.
The presence of Professor Vishwajit Ghosh
Yes.
is a privilege for us. So we can.
Prashanjit, I have a question. Prashanjit, can we request Dr. Ghosh sir to say something on this session?
That would be wonderful. Sir, can you say something which would be definitely enlightening for us?
You see, I have been commenting on the papers being presented. Obviously, we are researching on the new aspects being thrown to us during the pandemic situation. There are talks about new methodologies. There are talks about new dimensions in social science research, new topics, new areas being thrown to all of us. For instance, we are aware of trafficking, dowry, domestic violence, the violence against women. These are all known areas for many of us. But during pandemic, certain new things have been, they have brought in. For instance, what happens to those migrant women workers who return back home? What happens to those? And this question was thrown by a speaker I attended a webinar organized by Women's Commission, Indian Women's Commission, where we started talking about issue of trafficking in India post-COVID situation. And it was then revealed that many of those women who return back home, migrant women in particular, they won't be going back, and probably they will be easy target for the traffickers again. Then there's the issue of child marriage, because when the schools and colleges are stopped, children are not going to teenage girls or boys, they're not going to school. So there is less control by the teachers, less parental control, or less societal control. Nobody, conducive volunteers, they are not able to see who is coming, who is not coming to school. So this is an opportunity for parents to cleverly manipulate information and arrange the marriage of their child daughters. Then there is the issue of domestic violence, where alcoholic husbands stay back at home, where abusive husbands stay back at home, and the way they behave with their wives, where they behave with their children. Probably child abuse has gone up to certain extent, and it's not father alone. It is probably also the act of a mother who keeps on looking into the study, progress being made by the children in daily discourse. And in Bengali forms, we often hear mothers shouting, "Ei tui polli na, saradin ki korli?" Now that kind of thing probably has become a common thing. So the social world of children, they are not allowed to go to school, they are not allowed to play, they are not allowed to go out. So what happens to the world of children? That is quite wonderful area for all of us. And then those who are forced to go out, for instance, media personnel, right? For instance, Subroto has to go attend his college daily. What happens to persons like these? Then police, then doctors and nurses. I think you talked about health professionals, ayas, and then those health workers who go go from home to home to collect information about who is suffering from fever and who is not. They are the ones who are the warriors fighting against COVID, along with the doctors and police, police personnel, and many of them are women. So we need to locate, bring out all these new issues, where probably we need to do more research on what happens to the life of Aya, who has to work and who has to also consume medicine. Do you probably know? I believe you all know that many of those who are working in the field, doctors, police personnel, people who come to collect blood at a home, right? Or people who test us when you go for COVID testing, they are asked by medical professionals to take certain medicine on daily or weekly basis. What has been the impact of consumption of those medicines on their health, right? So many unknown issues which are not there in our society, which actually we haven't thought of. We haven't thought of all these, right? They are there, and we need to locate more and more on those issues, and we need to do research more and more on those issues. With these few years, I'm now handing over the microphone to Prashanjit Chattopadhyay and other organizer for ending this session.
Thank you, sir. You have shed wonderful light, explicated the theme beautifully. We must be thankful to you. Pulokesh, if we can agree with Sir, Professor Vishwajit Ghosh, we can wind up the session for now to come back again. We are supposed to join at 2:45 p.m. What do you say?
Yes, of course. Of course. We can join after the lunch break, 2:45.
Sir, I have something to add, sir. Sir, myself, Jyoti, I have something to add, sir.
Yes, Jyoti.
Yes, sir, it was very difficult to join because there were so many links shared and I could not join. That's why I joined late. After, when I want to join from 2:45, which link I have to join using? Please,
You have to
sir.
join in this link, via this link.
This link only, sir?
This link.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye, sir.
Prashanjit,
Pulu, well.
Dr. Talukdar has joined convener of this program. So, will he say something on this session?
We can request, we can implore our convener, Dr. Sanjeev Talukdar, to say something before the lunch break begins.
Because we have covered all the speakers already.
Yes, and
okay, is the session over?
Yes, everybody has.
Everybody has presented the paper.
No, a few people were absent. They could not join. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 could not join for some reasons.
So should we wait for them, or
মানে কতক্ষণ ওয়েট করবি? তাদের নাম রিপিটেডলি বলা হয়েছে এবং
আর স্যার কি নেই নাকি? স্যার
স্যার
বেরিয়ে গেছেন?
বেরিয়ে
লিভ
গেছেন।
করেছেন, স্যার লিভ করেছেন।
স্যার লিভ করেছেন এবং স্যার বললেন যে এই আসবে না বা এনেই অমুকের ইলেকশন ডিউটি ট্রেনিং আজকে।
আচ্ছা,
মনে হয় 2:45 জয়েন করি তাহলে আবার।
2:45.
হ্যাঁ, then we can conclude this session.
After the lunch break.
Chairperson, you can conclude the session and request the participants to come back through this link, through this very link,
to this
at 2:45.
this very link. We are expecting you. You are supposed to join us via this link at 2:45. So for now, goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Welcome.